So, a first question for you both. Tell us the first time you discovered Judy.
Well, I am 48. I don't expect anybody else to reveal their age here. Don't worry.
46.
But I'm probably from one of the last generations that as a small child didn't have VCRs or DVDs, and when you watched an old movie, it was either in a rep house or on television with the rest of the country. And every year they would have The Wizard of Oz on television around Easter, I think, or Thanksgiving, one of those two. And it was this truly kind of communal family experience that, harkens back to, the 50s, when TV first came into being. So yes, I was sort of struck by her then, and then it, continued through my life, and when I went to Hollywood to make my first albums, her spirit followed me, and I got more into the adult Judy, but more on that later.
Well, it's pretty hard to lie about your age when you were in a movie called 16 Candles. So I'm 54. And Wizard of Oz. It was always on around Christmas, Thanksgiving, Christmas. And we had a color TV. And my father was blind. He's just passed away. And I remember it was always a really big deal for him for us to see it because of the moment when it turns to color. And he never saw it, but he was always so intrigued about that moment, and he couldn't wait for us to watch it and then go, So I think that was the first time I saw Judy. And then, of course, also the other one, the Ring, Ring, Ring. Thank you. Meet Me in St. Louis. And then, like you, I didn't really get into adult Judy until I was an adult.
Yeah.
And that's the great thing about Judy, is that she has all of these periods of her life that can speak to you, as a young kid. And of course, when I did all the teen movies when I was a teenager, I was compared a lot to Judy Garland and Mickey Rooney, because it was like the 80s version in a way of those movies. So those are my Judy connections.
Love that. So you're celebrating the Judy Centennial with a series of shows at City Winery, performing her music. So many of these songs were written for Judy, but so many artists find so much to explore and expand in the music. What do you know about Judy and or yourself from performing her music?
Well, let's see, because I have a funny beginning of this, because my mother, the late great Kate McGarrigle, and my dad, who's still with us, Loudon, they were staunch folkies from who in the 50s and 60s, when they were very young, they really kind of made this conscious decision to kind of cut ties with their parents and sort of all that their parents represented. And part of that was, Judy Garland's repertoire, like that kind of Frank Sinatra, Judy Garland, Dean Martin kind of swing jazzy music. Like they wanted to play the banjo. So when I got into to Judy, to specifically Somewhere Over the Rainbow and her material, my mother had to pause for a moment and sort of swallow her folk music shame, and then proceeded to teach me a lot of those songs, and begrudgingly, and also I have to say too, with my dad, he was a little bit let's just say I was a very expressive child, and was constantly.
That's what we call it now.
Yeah, and I think my dad especially was a little nervous about that, and me kind of gravitating so much towards Judy was also a sign of something else. And so so I think in a lot of ways, at the very outset, it was my homosexuality and my desire to kind of escape the real world, which was not, constructed for me, that I was drawn to that music because of that yearning and that lost quality. And
Can I just ask, when you listened and when you liked Judy Garland in the beginning, were you aware at that age that she was a gay or an LGBTQ icon, or was it just her music?
It's very interesting you mentioned that, because I really wasn't, and I do, but yet if you look back, there's a story I talk about on my album, the Judy Garland album that I did 20 years ago, where around that time when I would watch The Wizard of Oz, I was about 5 or 6. I would afterwards quite frequently have days where I would dress up as Judy, as Dorothy, and I had an apron called my Put It On, and I would dance around in my Put It On, and I had this little toy lamb, and that was Toto, and I just was Judy that day. On bad days, I was the Wicked Witch, and my mom had a lot of high heel shoes, and I would take the shoes and I would line them up in a circle, and then I would put on one of her gowns and I would melt for hours, and so, which is, and now that I look at it, it is, I was doing a drag show basically, but I didn't know it was a gay thing. Like, I had no idea if it was. It's interesting.
I feel we need to revive that.
I think so too.
Because that sounds like the most fabulous performance art I ever want to see.
How about you, Jordan? When was your first introduction to Judy?
I don't know. I don't remember not knowing The Wizard of Oz. And I just remember, the black and white to color, which is such a metaphor for all of us. Whatever is the color that turns on for us at whatever moment in our lives, and hopefully it keeps turning on. And all of those fabulous diva characters. I mean, I am with you. I was not you don't want to be Dorothy. You want to be the witch. You want to be the witch.
You got to tell us that story, though, about the necklace that you told us. Speaking of colors, yeah, it's an amazing story. This is hot off the presses.
So here's the thing about this. I got a delivery today from Carolina Herrera. Wes Gordon designs Carolina Herrera. And I opened it up, and it was this necklace with a card that said "Somewhere Over the Rainbow." I thought, oh, how lovely. He knows that we're doing this thing. No, they're designing this line of jewelry for Pride to support Hedrick Martin, and they sent it. And I wore it because I feel like it was a sign from Judy.
There.
It was a sign from Judy that we're all in the right place. In performance, each of you sounds yourself, your own voice. You're not imitating Judy when you sing her music, and yet she is with you in a very meaningful way, I think. Can you help us dissect the difference between imitating Judy and having her with you in your own voice?
Yeah, well, let's see. I think, first of all, as a singer, in general, and when you confront, the act of having to, perform her material, off the bat, you have to surrender and realize that you will never, top her kind of her abilities, because they were truly superhuman. I mean, and also somewhat infused with substances. I mean, there was other things.
Somewhat.
Somewhat. And so that's a whole like ball game that you have to just sort of lose immediately. But that being said, the songs are so amazing, and the lyrics are so well written, and the kind of how can I say it? I think even like the set list itself, like the variety of music and sentiments that come through the material is so deep that if you really kind of attack them with the same kind of vigor and the same kind of dedication and the same kind of ferocity that she had to, you will, come up with something if you've got some talent. So it's, but I think initially it is about never trying to top her or never trying to be her, and never trying to like impersonate her, because that's just, I don't know, you lose.
I feel like Judy Garland and Ella Fitzgerald taught me how to sing. Yeah. I mean, my dad taught me how to sing because I started singing with him when I was 3. But I think of female singers, those were the two that I really gravitated towards. And I think I was telling you, Jordan, when we spoke, I was in the first West Coast production of Annie in California. I wasn't Annie. I didn't get the lead. Just probably why I have red hair. But at the time, Andrea McArdle, who originated the role on Broadway, of course, was in a movie about the life of Judy Garland, which was, for all of us orphans, we watched that. We're so excited about that. And yeah, I really do feel like, in a way, she taught me how to sing, and that I still place my voice in a similar way that she did. I mean, of course, I'll never sound like Judy, but yeah, she taught me how to sing.
It's also about cutting the corners. That's what I always love about both of those singers, Ella Fitzgerald and Judy, is that whenever for me, it's not, I mean, yes, they have these incredible, explosive, high notes, and they know how to, end a cadenza and all of that stuff. But it's just those little turns they make between phrases, sort of the in-between sections that are so artfully kind of thought out, really, and amaze me,
In Judy's, I love how we're saying Judy like she's our cousin.
I know.
But
It's Garland.
if we're friends of Dorothy, we can be cousins with Judy. So in Judy's LA Times obituary, a critic was quoted as saying, "She doesn't give a concert, she conducts a seance." Having lived inside one of her legendary concerts, does that ring true for you?
Well, you definitely have to, how can I say this? You have to sacrifice something for the gods of music when you're performing that specific set list and with those arrangements. And it is a kind of, yeah, it's such a taxing kind of voyage that there's a spiritual element required to keep you going. That being said, what's funny about it is that there's also little tricks that happen a lot as well in the actual arrangements. Like, for instance, there's always one thing I learned really early on was that there was these, what you think are these huge finales or these huge big notes that she's singing at the end are actually are in lower keys than when she started out. There's all these funny little modulations that actually makes her end up singing in a lower key, like when they do a lot of the medleys and stuff. And so there's these little devices that you can tell, or when she goes to just do a few songs with the piano and then she's back out again. So it's very well constructed. But yes, but that being said, yes, there are moments where you just have to pray to the spirits that be and hope that they are there with you to support you. And they've shown up for me so far, except in Paris. They abandoned me in Paris.
What happened in Paris?
I lost my voice in Paris once. I had to do the Judy show, and it was at the Olympia. And I just had no voice, and I went out there foolishly. And what's interesting is that the Parisians kind of loved it. For them, I became more. They love when you screw up.
More broken. Yeah. Give me more broken in Paris.
They admired my destruction. So it was good. But what I've learned now that I'll do next time because I did it a bit in the rehearsals, is that I've developed a rather low voice over the years as I get older. I'll just do the whole thing in octave. I'll do Leonard Cohen sings Judy Garland.
So meta, I love it.
Yeah.
Somewhere.
Where does the seance notion take you in performance?
How do you mean with?
Well, I think, to me, what this observation is getting at is the sort of conjuring in performance,
Well, I've
different
never.
from.
Yeah, I've never performed Judy Garland. I mean, I didn't do what Rufus did, so I don't really have experience with it. I feel like I've sung her songs and I've definitely been influenced by her, but I've never attempted what you've what you've attempted. So I don't know. I will let you know after tomorrow night.
It's tomorrow night because
after I
Molly is
perform.
doing 2 shows tomorrow night with Rufus at City Winery. So maybe you could text us all.
Yes.
We'll get on a group chat and you'll let us know. So speaking about being inside, deciding to be inside that concert, Rufus, when we were talking earlier, you said that when you first listened to the Judy at Carnegie Hall album, for you was post 9/11 and the Iraq invasion, that one of your ways into it was a sort of patriotism, a different kind of reminder that America could be great, an excellence, a sophistication. And you said that it made you think that America was still worth fighting for.
Yeah, no, I think it's tremendously ironic that now that and since initially I did sing these songs or do this concert as a reaction to the Iraq War, because I was so angry with where this country was going, and in a way, and that album, that Judy Garland Carnegie Hall album, became this thread of hope that I could kind of grasp onto and really dream about, how America was occasionally a great place to be, and it's so ironic that now we're doing it again at this incredibly dark period of time, and during and that the hearings, the January 6th hearings start this evening, and yes, I do think that there's a reason for that. I mean, I feel like this is a moment in history when we have to kind of like grasp and dig and hold on to all that this country that makes this country great and wonderful and accepting and glorious, and because it's the house is on fire, and so it's very appropriate to be doing these songs again at this time.
I agree with you. A lot of there's a lot of people who've said well, I'll move to Europe or I'll move to Canada. I mean, you're already Canadian, so you can, that's a little easier for you. But I have the same feeling about it. I don't want to leave my country when it's hurting so much, because I love my country and I love these, I love our arts and our music. I mean, we've done extraordinary. Judy Garland, Louis Armstrong, Ella Fitzgerald, Sarah Vaughan, all of these people that I love so much, and I don't want to leave my country. I want to stay and fight, but it's hard. It's really hard right now.
No, it is hard, but these songs, and I think a lot about the songwriters too, because I'm a songwriter myself, and that's actually the secret reason probably why I did this to begin with, was to get into that material and really learn how to, fit a lyric with a melody like that. But that being said, I mean, these, whether you think of some of them were, refugees, from, and then some of them were, coming out of, and sort of the racist issues in the country. A lot of the songs are, come out of that turmoil. So it's very embedded in like the fault lines of this country that are still obviously very, very, very active today. So it makes sense to go back.
I love the notion of investigating music as as an offering, as a fight, as a conjuring. Molly, you pointed us in the beginning to the different phases of Judy. And we know so many different ones. There is tragic Judy, there is child star Judy, there is famous mother Judy, there is gay icon Judy. So we're going to unpack the faces of Judy.
Also, Judgment at Nuremberg, she does a dramatic role in that.
Right.
She's,
Great actress,
Yeah,
Judy.
incredible. Yeah.
All right, so let's start with tragic Judy.
Let's get it over with.
She said, "I'm always being painted a more tragic figure than I am. Actually, I get awfully bored with myself as a tragic figure." And yet, there's a lot of tragedy and struggle. Rufus, when we were talking earlier, you had said something so moving about identifying with some of her struggles, that Judy held your hand and you walked the path with her. So for so many, then, she can be not a tragic figure to gawk at, but a guide. Can you help us understand that?
Yeah, well, when I first, as I said, earlier, I first came in contact with her with The Wizard of Oz. But later, when I moved to Hollywood and started making my first records there, I then went through this next phase of just looking for her and imagining her, in that city and coming there more as a teen and hanging out as more of a teenager and a young woman, and getting into trouble and starting to really, learn the ropes and become more sophisticated. And in fact, there's like a famous hotel. It's not famous. It's god awful, and it was then, and it still is now, the St. Moritz boarding house or something, where she lived, with her mother when she first came. It's like across from Warner Brothers. Anyways, I would drive past that and imagine her life there. And at that same time, I started getting into, drugs and sex and, crazy times, and also, my career, and it all kind of, I don't know, it was all a kind of, for most of it was pretty fabulous and fun and great. And Judy was definitely kind of this wondrous presence and soundtrack. And I mean literally, because I would, at that time, Radiohead was really big, that band, and I would go into Tower Records and be like, I'm going to buy the next Radiohead album, and I'd walk out with 5 Judy records. It was like what happened? There was some sort of blackout, and I was this kind of, and I have to say that if you're going to talk about seances and conjuring and so forth, I do think that in her voice and in her recordings, I heard a kind of sadness, a kind of longing, a kind of wounded quality, but it was also a bit of like a warning that you might be having a good time now, but you'll have to pay the price at some point.
Yeah.
So I'll be with you here, and then of course things changed.
I always did think of Judy a little bit as a cautionary tale. She started as Frances Gumm, the Gumm sisters, and I started singing and acting when I was 3. And so I've always related to her. I'm just like a showbiz kid. And of course, I had an agent that said to me, I think I was 19 years old, and she said, "Oh, I had a horrible dream that you were in a mental institution." Which was so weird, and and I was like, why would you say that to me? But then it kind of it really sort of weighed on me, because I thought, this is what happens. You become a famous person. Everyone says, "Oh, you're so talented and you're so this," but then there's a trajectory. And that's just what it happened to Judy. It happened to Marilyn Monroe, and that's what's just going to happen to me. And it was always sort of weighing on me a little bit, And I thought about it a lot. And I realized at a certain point, no, that's not the life that I want to have. I want to have kids. I have 3. I want to have a long career, I want to, like, maybe I'm not going to be at that level my whole life, but I'm going to survive, and I'm going to keep going. And so I think in a way she was sort of sacrificed, in a way.
I just say though it's interesting because for me and for probably gay men older than me, she is certainly a gay icon, and deservedly so, and that makes a lot of sense. But I feel like as for around my generation and younger, I find a lot more women relate to her. I mean, there was this kind of shift, and it is even around the time when I did about 20 years ago when I did the first concert, that I found like most of the real die-hard fans were women, and then younger women who just sort of suddenly felt this resurgence, what said something to them, and maybe it was because she had been a mother and she had been this other figure. So I feel like she has become more of a female icon, or she is a female icon, but
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying.
She's just an icon, I think,
Yeah,
for everyone, for all of us.
She was kind of held by the gays for a bit.
Yeah.
Which is fine, but
Well, yeah, the gays have taste.
Yeah.
I mean,
So there's that. But can we put our finger on why Judy? Why Judy for that generation or several generations of gay men?
yeah. Well, I've thought long and hard about this, and I have my theory is that essentially Judy, and I know this for a fact because there's this one friend of mine, his name is Sid Croft, and Sid Croft? Yeah, Sid Croft, Sid and Marty Croft, they were these, and he's 94, but he knew Judy very, very well. And she was incredibly sexy, incredibly magnetic, and had this attractive quality. But it wasn't because she was beautiful. I mean, she could be incredibly beautiful, but there was other times when she wasn't. But it was more about her energy and her intelligence and her humor and her kind of like her attitude, unlike Lana Turner or Rita Hayworth, where it was just like they were these kind of goddesses, But for her, it was her earthy kind of person that was great. And I feel like a lot of gay men really kind of yearn for that more than being, this. I mean, sure, everybody wants to have the perfect body and have, be young and be, statuesque and everything. That's kind of what you're forced to do as a gay man. But really, what you want people to love you for who you are. And she was able to do that, to be herself and have people just fall head over heels for her all the time. And I think that to me is why she's is that magnetism that I think a lot of gay men wish that they could have.
well, I can't answer.
Sure you can.
Well, okay. I was telling you when we spoke, I was watching a movie with Gene Kelly, who I'm a huge Gene Kelly fan. They did this movie together. Do you know?
Oh, yeah, they did. Is it Summerstock?
Yeah, Summerstock. Not a great movie, but
Good. There's some.
there's some good moments.
It has my
but,
favorite line in it.
What's
from that, because it all takes place on a farm, and
Yeah.
they're gonna do the
It's pretty silly.
they're gonna do this show in the barn or whatever, and Abigail is the sister
Yeah.
who wants to put the show on,
Yeah.
and Judy's like a farmer, like
Yeah.
she's like an actual farmer,
Yeah.
and then her sister Abigail is like, we're gonna do this show, and I'm gonna bring in all my friends, and then Judy grabs her and goes, Abigail, this is a farm. I don't know.
She's so good. What I was telling Jordan is that when you watch it, Gene Kelly is there, and I couldn't take my eyes off of Judy.
Yeah.
She really did have that magnetism and that gravitas as an actor, where even if she was doing this really silly movie, her acting is just so good that she just completely grounds it. And I just found my eyes constantly going to her to see what she was doing, to see how she was reacting. Because a lot of actors sort of space out when somebody else is doing something. So that was one of my first lessons as an actor. My parents had somebody watch me. I think I was on Facts of Life or something. And they said, can you watch her and give her some advice? And I would do my line, and then it would be somebody else's line, and then I would just like, all the lights would go out. I was just like, and said, no, you have to listen to what other people are doing. And I never forgot that. And I still, to this day, if somebody is doing a scene, I always want to see what the other actors are doing, how they're responding. And Judy is always connected, no matter what. She's always watching. You always get the feeling that she's always thinking about something, and you want to know what she's thinking and feeling. And she has another superpower, which my husband says I have the superpower too, which is I make people cry, and Judy makes.
Yeah. Oh God.
She
Water works.
she no matter what, you just want to cry. You just feel so connected to her.
Yeah, actually, my mother, at one point, she was talking about Judy Garland, who, as I said before, it wasn't really up her alley. I mean, they were real folkies, and I guess when I was singing Somewhere Over the Rainbow incessantly as a small child, she finally had to kind of get into it. But she said there was some famous, and I guess she had watched on PBS some famous documentary or something. But there's this one, and I subsequently saw it, and it's so incredible. It's this thing where she is doing her stage show, and obviously she's just done. I think it's from Easter Parade. You know, the one when she's dressed as a hobo. You know, a couple of bums or whatever, and she's dressed as a hobo, and then she sits down at the edge of the stage and she sings Somewhere Over the Rainbow with like with the dirty face, and it's one of the most riveting moments in art is when she that footage.
Molly, I want to go back to what you were saying about cautionary tale. A journalist had said Garland was the first public victim of stardom, and certainly not the last. And I'm curious, what do we learn about ourselves as a culture when we look at Judy, at Britney, at others, and the rise and fall stories of fame? How do we think about our role in that?
I don't know. It's a tough one.
Yeah, that is a tough one.
Well, it's about 8:06. We're ready for a tough.
I mean, it's a good question. I think, it's why reality TV is what it is, because we have an insatiable desire to see people fail or do embarrassing things or and I guess we also have an insatiable desire to perform and act and expose ourselves, and I think that is on us. And I'm not a big fan of reality television myself, but my kids are.
Yeah.
They love it, and I try not to be too snobby about it, because I guess it does have a place. But I don't agree with what he said. I don't think that she was the first victim of stardom. I mean, I think ever since we've had movie stars. I mean, if you think about Fatty Arbuckle,
Yeah.
And I mean, there's just been so many, Clara Bow, and there's been so many.
I mean, for me, the unfortunate thing now compared to that is that I think at that time, even though Judy wasn't necessarily party to it because she was so young, so she didn't really have a choice, but a lot of those actresses did when they went to Hollywood. And the thing is that, okay, it's horrible things would happen to you. You were essentially in a harem. You were property of this studio. It was, your life was regulated. But in return, you got the most amazing lighting, the most amazing training. You had the most incredible songwriters. You had the most incredible directors. What you were creating was pretty much guaranteed. Even at that time, they knew it to be eternal. You know, like even they knew that, so with the studio system. So I feel like then it was this sort of, it was a bit of a Faustian bargain, you know. Today, what do you get? I mean, it's pretty, like, you know, for this sort of sacrifice that that people kind of run so willingly into and destroy themselves. It's like moths to a flame. It's just, it is a bit odd now, I find. 'Cause at least then
I don't know if I would have chosen it as an adult. I mean, I have had to choose it from, you know, I think, well, I can do something else, or I can stop doing it, you know, which is one of the reasons why I write and translate and sing, and, you know, because if I only did that, I think I just knew at a pretty young age that it was not sustainable for me, you know, for my mental health, for my, you know, and like I said, I decided that the most important thing was to survive. So I had to find a way that I could survive and do everything that I wanted to do and have a family. But yeah, I feel like it's not terribly appealing for people now. Like when I think of what you have to go through now, I mean,
probably more money, I guess, but that's about it.
In retrospect, would you have started as young as you started?
I don't think that I would have been professional. My husband and I have made the decision not to let our kids be professional, and which is a big bone of contention and a daily argument. You know,
Daily.
Yeah, daily. Oh yeah, yeah. But I having gone through it myself, I think you really.
You're right.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sorry, kids.
I mean, I clearly loved it. It was not like somebody was dragging me kicking and screaming. Like it was what I lived for. And my parents didn't know. I didn't come from a showbiz family. My dad was a jazz musician, but he wasn't, you know, famous or anything. So we didn't know. So they thought that they were doing, you know, the right thing. But it really is a trade-off. And
I did the same thing as you did, but thankfully it was in Canada.
Yeah.
So you could only go like so far before it
We love you,
was all
Canada.
in French. Yeah.
Well, so this is an interesting thing because it does take us to famous mother Judy. And it sounds like you are already dealing with famous mother of potentially performing famous children.
Yes.
Once they are allowed
Yes.
to do that. You both are parents. So I'm interested in how you understand Judy as a mother. What it's like to be a parent who performs, what it's like to have your child's parent share themselves with so many others, and I know so many others feel very proprietary of you both. How do you unpack that?
I just had to say, and regarding that, I mean, yesterday was a pretty amazing day for me because I spent, before doing the show in the evening at City Winery, I spent the day with Lorna Luft, Judy's daughter, and because they were, in honor of the centenary of Judy Garland, they had Lorna and I light up the Empire State Building in a rainbow colors, and then later on in the evening we went before the show we went to Stonewall, and I sang "Somewhere Over the Rainbow" for Lorna and in front of a picture of her mother, and it was somewhat corny, but appropriately so.
Best
you
kind.
know, which we love, and I really got to spend time with Lorna and just observing her go through this day and be on one hand totally professional and totally charming and totally gracious to everybody, but just burst into tears regularly and just realize how much she still misses her mother and how much she feels how much that relationship is just this such a central part of her life, and it was incredibly touching. The most touching thing for me, though, and this is in terms of being a parent myself and thinking about our daughter, Viva, is that I really felt like Judy would be so proud of Lorna, you know, and that she kept it together, that she's now a mother and a grandmother, and that she even, and she became well known and everything, but she didn't necessarily succumb to the ravages, and you know, and yeah, so it was. I was in that sort of vortex yesterday all day, and it was very beautiful, and I felt very honored to be, you know, allowed in that and to be a part of that.
I really feel for Judy as a mother. I think it was really difficult. I mean, she also didn't have marriages that lasted too, so it was really it was on her to make a living, and she, you know, sang for their supper, and it must have been really hard, and I definitely feel that, you know. It is hard sometimes, you know, to make that decision. Am I going to take this film? Am I going to go on this tour? You know, I know that I need to support my family, but then they also need you too. And it is very hard for my kids, like my younger kids, my 12-year-old twins, haven't seen my movies. They've only seen me, I think the only thing they've seen me do is a part in Doc McStuffins, which I did because Adele was a big fan. But our elder daughter has seen it, and she's graduating from high school in a couple weeks, and it's been really difficult. It's not always easy for her because I'm very well known for these, you know, movies that still speak to generations, and it's just weird to have people have this relationship with your mom that you don't recognize, you know.
Yeah, we have an interesting case too in our family, because I mean, I grew up in a very kind of jolly musical family where everybody sang all the time and did Christmases together, and we went on tour, and it was like that, and I can't really say that there was too much negative stuff about it. You know, concerning the press and stuff like that, it was always pretty easygoing. But our daughter, you know, her grandfather was Leonard Cohen, and that's like a whole other level in terms of attention and you know, just creepiness, and just in terms of what the public can do, and so we've had to sort of, you know, readjust my perception of that a little bit, because it is, you know, it can be scary.
By the way, if anyone wants to cry, if you feel like crying, listen to What'll I Do with Rufus and his mother and his sister and his father. What'll I Do? That was Irving
What'll
Berlin.
I Do? Yeah, Irving
wasn't it?
Berlin. Yeah, we did it. Yeah, no, it's pretty. Well, it's very touching when we did that, because of course, you know, my parents divorced and we all hated each other, and we're kind of singing this song.
We can still sing.
A family that sings together kills each other.
But is entertaining to watch. All right, so we have some questions from our audience here and also watching on the live stream. Claire, all the way from Madrid, hello, says, Rufus, which lyrics from the repertoire of your show has given you more problems to memorize?
That's entertainment. Gets me every time. Yeah, the bride with the guy on the side. That's the one I gotta keep remembering. Bride with the guy on the side, which is pretty risque for 1940 something.
Yeah.
I would add, what lyrics stick with you the most for either of you?
Well, I'm really in it right now, but for me, from the show, what really sticks with me the most is, oh God, okay, no, the lyrics to The Man That Got Away are just, you know, goodbye, every trick of his you're on to, but fools will be fools, and where's he gone to, you know, stuff like that. Yeah, Man That Got Away is getting me these days. Has gotten me.
I'm singing Stormy Weather, so I'm really in that. And there's a line in there about old rockin' chair will get me. What does
Oh.
that mean exactly? It's like rockin' chair.
Well, that's kind of a bit part of the vernacular, because that's a blues sort of reference. I think. But you know, it's interesting we mentioned him because whether it's The Man That Got Away, Stormy Weather, Somewhere Over the Rainbow, it's all Harold Arlen. And someone, you know, the Harold Arlen Judy thing is, whatever. That's a profound, you know, Get Happy.
Yeah.
You know, he really wrote all of those really classic songs for her. So whatever, just had shout out to Harold Arlen and Yip Harburg.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
yes, totally. Continuing in our song questions, Claire asks, what song from Judy's repertoire has marked you the most as a person or artist throughout your career?
Marked me the most. I mean, aside from Somewhere Over the Rainbow, which I don't mean, can I say something terrible?
Yes. In fact, I hope you will.
Well, when I first met Lorna Luft years ago, when I first did these concerts, I was pretty bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and kind of newly sober and thought I could, you know, do everything. And I walked up to her and I said, I just want you to know, Lorna, Somewhere Over the Rainbow was my song. You know, it's always been my song. My mom made me. I was going on, and she was like, she was pretty speechless. Like, oh really?
Actually, kid.
Okay, but I will say that I do feel like it's not my song now, but there's a place. Okay, it's not mine yet, but I do own it a little bit in a way. I mean, the version of I'm trying to phrase this properly. I am very honored.
Do it.
Just let it out.
I feel proud of the fact that I'm able to own that song a little bit, a piece of that song, you know, Somewhere Over the Rainbow, because a lot of people sing it. There's a lot of versions. And I do feel like my work, you know, me having now sung it for 20 years, people, you know, do associate me with it at certain times. And that's an incredible thrill. So, because, and I'm very proud of that. It's one of the most proudest things of my life. So, yeah.
One of my best friends asked me to sing Over the Rainbow at her wedding, and I wasn't thrilled about it just because I felt like I always like to sing songs that are just not as well known, and Over the Rainbow, I felt like, you know, I'd sung that song since I was, you know, a little kid. But interestingly, this is kind of sad, but I mean, it's very sad, but I was touring in Australia when the shooting happened in Orlando, and I felt so upset and so far away from my country, and the only thing I could think of to do was that song, which was not in my set. And I did something which I always ask people to put their phones away, because I just kind of hate, I mean, you know, you just hate when people are just sitting there with their phones and you feel like you're not having a connection. And that was the one time where I said, everybody, if you want to film this, film it and get it out there. And this is for all of the victims and their families. And it was like, I felt so close to that song. And I've always felt that way since then, so.
You know, that makes me think Stonewall has a kind of gravitational pull. My husband and I find ourselves going there after every one of these moments, epiphanies, tragedies, triumphs. And it occurs to me, listening to you, that song has the same kind of gravitational pull. That like it'll be there. It's there for us, like a home.
Yeah. Forever. Right?
You bet, and it's mine. No, it's not mine. It's not mine.
Rufus, would you sing it for us?
I'd love to sing it for you. Okay. Let's try. Okay. Put the leg down. Somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, there's a land that I heard of once in a lullaby. Somewhere over the rainbow, skies are blue, and the dreams that you dare to dream really do come true. Someday I'll wish upon a star and wake up where the clouds are far behind me, where troubles melt like lemon drops high above the chimney tops. That's where you'll find me. Somewhere over the rainbow, bluebirds fly, birds fly over the rainbow. Why, oh, why can't I? If happy little bluebirds fly beyond the rainbow, why, oh, why can't I?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. I did it a bit of the Leonard Cohen version there, slightly. It was in a lower key, but anyways.
Well, I just can't think of a better way to end this evening. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rufus Wainwright, Molly Ringwald. Happy birthday, Judy Garland.
Happy birthday, Judy.